Join us and help us continue to support the many talented people of our community. Learn how to get your business highlighted on Lacrosse Local. Go to lacrosselocal.com and click on Advertise. The Frozen River Film Festival is taking place February 5th through 12th in Winona, Minnesota. Nearly 50 feature and short-form documentary films that will take you to the heart of current events, the forefront of social change, and distinct cultures in an increasingly global community. For tickets and more information, visit frff.org. Join us at the Lacrosse Winter Roots Festival Saturday, February 11th at the Lacrosse Center. We'll celebrate Wisconsin favorites in music, cuisine, local beer, and spirits. Grab tickets at lacrosselocal.com. We talked with Emily Sustar of the Motherhood Collective, an organization who is dedicated to supporting women, mothers, and caregivers in the parenthood transition. We chat prenatal yoga, postpartum, and mama flow yoga, and learn about all the childbirth education and support classes out there. You can find more conversations, food reviews, live music, and events on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is Lacrosse Local.
My name is Emily Sustar, and I was born in Chicago, Illinois. From there, moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and was kind of raised there until I was a freshman in high school. Then we moved here to La Crosse, Wisconsin. After going to high school here, I went to college up in the Twin Cities, and then right after college, moved out to Boulder, Colorado, and did my Montessori teacher training out there. So trained at the Montessori Education Center of the Rockies. And worked out there for a long time. And then when I was pregnant with my first child 11 years ago, which is he's that old now, we moved, my husband and I, to La Crosse, actually for a job opportunity for him. So how did I get into yoga? There's a long answer to that question, but I'll try and keep it shorter. But I actually first got into yoga because my mom brought me to a yoga class when I was in high school. So it was actually a Iyengar, which is a more alignment-based kind of style. I started going with her, and I found that it was really beneficial to support me because I was running track at that time. So it was like a good cross-training and stretching and strengthening for running track. And then in college, I kind of fell away from it. But then when I moved to Colorado, Boulder especially, has so many amazing yoga opportunities. So I started getting more into my yoga practice in Boulder, and actually was going to Core Power, which is like, there's so many great local studios in Boulder, but Core Power is a great studio too. And I knew I wanted to do teacher training, but I was teaching full-time as a Montessori teacher at that time. So I was just trying to figure out, how do I build this in? But I loved my practice, and I wanted to share it with my young students in the Montessori classroom. So I started doing like a little 15 to 20 minute yoga practice with them every morning before we got started with our day. And it was truly incredible, like the difference that I saw in their behavior, in their impulse control, in their ability to focus and stay on task. It was kind of an experiment, but it was really like tangible results that I saw in the classroom. So I was like, there is something about this. I need to get more into this. And even just, thinking about utilizing yoga in schools as a tool, it's amazing because kids need to move and breathe just like us. It helps all of us to focus and center and ground. So so I decided to do my children's yoga teacher training first, which is kind of opposite how a lot of people do it. So I went down to Crested Butte, Colorado for that. And I trained at a studio called Yoga for the Peaceful with a program called Yoginos, which is based out of Texas. Beth Reese is the founder of that, and they're wonderful. They do a lot of amazing things. So that was my first, like, dipping my toe into yoga teacher training, and then continued to teach yoga to the kids in my classroom. And then I got pregnant with Henry, our oldest, and I knew my practice needed to change because my body was changing a lot. So I was really lucky to find a studio right by the Montessori school that I taught in Denver. It was called Belly Bliss, that offered prenatal yoga classes, postpartum yoga classes, baby and me. They had different community events. And it was so helpful because as a first time mom, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like everything is new. I was just thirsting for more knowledge on how to go about just moving my body and being in my body because my body was changing drastically every day. So that was kind of when I first fell in love with prenatal yoga, was when I was pregnant with my oldest child. But my husband got a job opportunity here in La Crosse when I was pregnant with Henry. We decided to move when I was 30 weeks pregnant. And so it was crazy. It was so many life changes happening at once. I was leaving my job as a full-time Montessori teacher. He was starting a new job here at Train. We bought our first house. We moved across the country and we had our first kid all within like 2 months, I guess. It was crazy. So I lost that community that I had in Denver that was really supportive during my pregnancy, but it planted a seed because I knew like what could be possible and what could be created to really support women as they move through this transition.
So that was something that was always in the back of your mind that eventually became the Motherhood Collective. That takes some time to kind of develop into what it is now in some sense, because it's kind of been slowly growing over the last couple of years, correct?
Yes, yes. So that seed was planted a long time ago. And I kind of like, so moving to La Crosse, I had like 10 weeks left in my pregnancy. I was trying to find resources, like trying to find prenatal yoga classes, trying to find a doula, trying to find a community of other moms. And I just wasn't finding anything. And so it was a hard transition just because, I had just moved and felt pretty isolated. And also everything was new, being a first time mom. So I didn't really, again, know what I was doing and wanted more information and resources and wasn't really finding that here. Yeah, that was kind of when the seed was initially planted. And I was like, maybe one day, I can make something like that happen in La Crosse. So then fast forward, I start attending classes at Root Down Yoga Studio, and I share with them my children's yoga teacher training and background. And they were like, would you like to start offering children's yoga classes for us? And I said, sure. So together with Mandy and Nick Roush, who are the owners at Root Down, we created the Sprouts program, which was lucky to have your sweet kiddos be a part of. So I was the program coordinator for that for 7 years. Taught a lot of the classes, but I also trained several other teachers to teach children's yoga classes. And through that time at Root Down, I did my 200-hour training to teach vinyasa classes. And then I also did my prenatal yoga teacher training as well. And then eventually became a registered prenatal yoga teacher through Yoga Alliance, which just means you have to like turn in a lot of hours of teaching. But I have been teaching prenatal yoga for, I guess, 7 years now. But I also, during my time at Root Down, became the prenatal and family programming coordinator. So all of that stuff kind of fell on my plate. And I loved doing it. I loved teaching yoga to all different types of people. I love teaching it to adults and to children, but especially to moms going through this transition of pregnancy into early postpartum.
Is it usually someone who'd been involved in yoga before, or is it someone who's brand new who comes to want to participate in these different classes? How does that usually work? Like 4 or so years ago, I was hesitant to do yoga. So I can understand someone who's pregnant, maybe had never done yoga before. Yeah. I mean, what can they expect? What is the process like?
Yeah, so the classes at the Motherhood Collective are really for anyone, meaning that you don't have to be like a yoga expert to attend classes at the Motherhood Collective. So really all levels, beginners to people who have been practicing for years, even people who have never even tried yoga before. The classes are really accessible and they're made to support the needs of a pregnant person and postpartum person. So basically through all the trimesters of pregnancy and then through the whole transition postpartum as well. They're really accessible for anyone, and they are smaller. Class sizes are generally like 5 to 10 people. So you do get a lot more kind of individualized, feedback on what's going on, but also because the needs of the body are so different during that time, during pregnancy and postpartum, it is a different class than like, say, a vinyasa or a hot vinyasa class.
Mm-hmm.
So it just looks really different.
Could someone basically be with you going to Motherhood Collective from, the early pregnancy all the way to 6 months after? Or is it, something like that, like almost like 12 to 18 months sort of project in some sense? Or do you go back to your normal yoga practice, or what's the kind of timeline for it?
Yeah. So really the timeline is kind of like 2 to 3 years, because if you start at the beginning of your pregnancy, and pregnancy is really like 10 months versus 9 months. So if you start at the beginning of your pregnancy and go all the way through, and then there would probably be like 4-ish weeks that you have off when you initially give birth, and recovery after that. But then kind of around that 4 to 6 week mark, coming back for postpartum classes, they're kind of more, they're yoga, but there's also a lot of functional movement and like rehab in them as well, because you really do have to reconnect to the core muscles, reconnect to the way your body breathes, reconnect to the pelvic floor, glutes, hips, like all of the things that undergo a lot during the birth process. Those classes are very gentle, but very supportive, and they're really strategic in terms of like the movement that we do and the breath that we do. But then through Baby and Me yoga and Mama Flow yoga, which is a hybrid of prenatal and postpartum classes, and then family classes, you could really, come for a while. Most people come to Baby and Me yoga with children who are not super mobile yet. So those babies that are still kind of, they lay on the mat and hang out and are along for the ride. And once their babies kind of start crawling and walking, then they tend to not go to Baby and Me yoga, just because it's harder for the parent, to enjoy the yoga class when their kids, all over the place. But we do have a safe space for kids, so it's okay for them to wander around the studio, but it's probably more enjoyable for the parent if the baby's a little bit younger. So yeah, and then with family yoga classes, I mean, you can bring your 10-year-old, which is we had a family class this weekend and my kids came. So I would say the time phase is more like 2 to 3 years if you do it from start to kind of phasing out of the baby classes.
I have 3 kids. Of course, I have no concept of pregnancy, thinking about it, and you explain it to me, it is like physical therapy. I mean, it's happy, exciting, but it's a traumatic experience that mentally and physically you have to kind of overcome. So it's kind of interesting, to use that sort of avenue for folks and women to get back into adjustment, trying to understand, like putting that in perspective of like, it's an injury in some sense.
Yeah, you're correct. It absolutely is a trauma to the body. I mean, birth can be amazing and empowering, and so can pregnancy, but there's also some trauma involved in that as well, because it's so demanding on your body and your mind and emotionally. There's a statistic that I've heard that is incredible, that like our peak athletes, like who are the most high performing athletes in the world, their VO2 max and heart rate variability and all of those things are like comparable to what's happening in a woman's body when she's pregnant. So basically, when a woman is pregnant, you're kind of at the max of your human performance. So it is really demanding on the body. And like we know, just in terms of like nutrient wise, like the baby is pulling all of the nutrients from you for them, right? So it is such a unique time. And even if you don't grow and birth your baby, like say you're an adoptive parent, like it's still a transition into parenthood. And there's actually a term for the transition into motherhood. It's called matrescence. And it sounds like adolescence because at no other point in time are your hormones fluctuating so much? Is your body growing and changing so much? Are you going through so many different mental shifts than you do when you enter into parenthood? So we're actually like coming out with new terminology to kind of define this period of life. And it makes sense that we would need a community that's specifically dedicated to serving people moving through that transition because it is such a unique and intense time. So that kind of brings me to sharing a little bit more about the Motherhood Collective, because I know I've talked about a lot of other stuff, but the Motherhood Collective is a community that's dedicated to serving the needs of women, mothers, and caregivers moving through parenthood, but also that immediate parenthood transition of pregnancy into postpartum. And so we do that through the yoga classes. So prenatal yoga, mama flow yoga, which is a hybrid of prenatal and postpartum yoga, baby and me yoga, and family yoga. But we also have a support group that is 100% free, and that meets twice a month on Fridays at 11:15. And the emphasis of that support group is on supporting perinatal mental health. We have been facing a perinatal mental health crisis in really the past 3 years since the start of the pandemic. I mean, I think mothers felt unsupported before, but definitely when the pandemic hit, it was like, you know, a lot more was placed on the plates of moms trying to, work and virtual school and all of the craziness of that. And so PMADS is a term that refers to perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. So it's not just postpartum depression, but it's kind of the whole spectrum of all those mood and anxiety disorders. And actually 1 in 5 women have a PMAD. So probably most people that have experienced a PMAD at some point in time. I know I actually experienced postpartum anxiety after my first was born, and to some lesser degree after my second and third babies as well. But mental health in moms is just really super important. So that's a big part of our mission as well. And then we're also really big on education too. So we want to provide education so that women know their options and that they can feel empowered about how they're choosing to move through their birth and then parenthood experience. So we offer a childbirth education class called Empowered Birth, Childbirth Preparation Class. I'm a birthing from within childbirth educator. And then the woman who I teach with, she's a doula and she's also a childbirth educator. And then we also offer a breastfeeding class so if people are curious about doing that, wanting to prepare, we have a lactation consultant come in and teach that. And then we also just offer other different various educational opportunities and community events. So yeah, we have a lot going on, but the goal is really to kind of serve people and empower them as they move through this transition.
Just checking out your website here, motherhoodcollectivelax.com. It's interesting to see also, in your blog, you have a variety of different birthing stories, different people that pass through, I imagine, through this service in a sense, in this community. I'm sure every experience through this that these people are willing to share, but was there one example of something about how this has helped an individual or a family?
Oh my gosh.
So many.
Well, it's been really neat to hear when people share their stories and how it's helped them. But one of my favorites is from a woman who welcomed her second child this summer. I think the baby was born in June, but she found me in the heart of the pandemic. So I have to backtrack a little bit and kind of explain how the Motherhood Collective started before I get into the story. So in the pandemic, Root Down closed, and there was a lot of uncertainty about whether or not it was going to reopen. And I was home with my kids trying to homeschool them and was devastated by Root Down's closing. And so, not that the Motherhood Collective replaces Root Down, because it definitely doesn't. And we totally do two separate, but both beautiful and wonderful things. But I needed something to fill that hole and to connect back to community. And I've always wanted to create an intentional community to serve mothers and caregivers and people moving through this transition. I decided to start fully virtually on Zoom in November 2020. The Motherhood Collective is a pandemic baby, essentially. So this one woman found me. She had welcomed her son at some point during the pandemic, or maybe it was shortly before the pandemic started. And so she did postpartum yoga with me fully virtually. And that was helpful in her healing because she had a traumatic C-section experience. And then when she got pregnant with her daughter, then we were in our physical space because we started sharing space with Bebop and Bundles on Caledonia Street in September 2021. So we've been in our physical studio space for about a year now. So she was able to start right away with prenatal yoga and did prenatal yoga in the second pregnancy all the way through. Had a lot of fear around birth just after the traumatic experience she had with her son. And she took the empowered childbirth preparation class, and she was really hoping for a VBAC. And she did all the stuff. She did so much preparation on her own, but she did all the things at the Motherhood Collective too, just in terms of learning the positions, learning the breathing, learning the different movements you can do. And she had an amazing VBAC experience, and she actually caught her own baby.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so she caught her own baby and brought her up to her chest. And then another thing, she had struggled with her son when he was born because of some of the trauma of the C-section. They weren't able to establish a really good nursing relationship. And so she exclusively pumped with him. But then with her daughter, because of the birth experience, just being an easier and more empowered birth, she was able to establish a really good nursing relationship with her and is still nursing her daughter. And I think her daughter's coming up on 6 months. So yeah. And then she's been in postpartum classes with her daughter now. So working on healing. So it is really neat to see people coming back with each baby. And that's been cool to see too, because I have had students who I had in prenatal yoga when they were pregnant with their first child and then come back with their second and third and fourth or whatever. So it is pretty neat to see that and to know that I'm making a difference in the lives of women.
Just being a man and feeling like a dummy right now. But, when I've had,
You're
my wife has had 3 kids.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see something like that where it's a community because, I think, during that time she would go to maybe 1 or 2 classes. I would also go, but not something that's kind of from beginning to end to, the future. It's really kind of interesting to allow that for something like this experience. So, checking out your website, the stories, people can figure out, what it's all about. Is the website where people should follow along with you? Are you active on social media or where should people get all the info?
Yeah. So you can go to our website, which you said is motherhoodcollectivelax.com. You can also go to our Instagram page, probably most active on there, which is the Motherhood Collective LAX as well. And then Facebook too. We have a Facebook page as well. But for the most up to date, where you can see all the schedule, all the classes, all the support groups, that's going to be on the website.
Oh, and relevant too, you can also give gift certificates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a great organization, but it's also it's like you give gift certificates to force people to do it in some sense. But they'll be for the better, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I did want to share one special event that's coming up that I'm really excited about is that I'm actually offering a retreat at the Franciscan Spirituality Center in February. And it's called Journey Through Motherhood. And it's not just for new moms. So it's kind of for any mom, because here's the deal. Like, yes, when you have a new baby, things are really hard and it's all new and you are just trying to figure it out. But as you get older kids, like there's still hard parts about parenthood, right? Like it just changes, right? You're not like up in the middle of the night changing diapers, but the needs of your kids don't stop. It just shifts into different needs. So you're having these intense like emotional discussions with them, or they're hurt by someone who said something mean at school, or whatever. So there's just the demands of parenthood don't go away. They just change. And I think we all are deserving of support in that. So yeah, it's going to be a really lovely time. It's a Friday evening through Saturday.
So what you're trying to tell me is parenting never ends.
Yeah.
I thought we were gonna get to a thing here, and then it's like, and then you're done.
Right?
Moving on. No, never.
No, I don't think it does. Even when they don't live in your house anymore, you still have to parent them.
God dang it.
Lacrosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you'd like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at Lacrosse Local. Find out more about us at lacrosselocal.com, and you can subscribe to the Lacrosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We appreciate it.